What's up everybody, it's Rafi from ZURB, and this week we got part 6 of our series on Flexbox. Now last week we talked about the XY grid and specifically the grid frame. If you missed that one, I'll link it up here so you can check it out. Now this week we're gonna go into Foundation's Flexbox helper classes. There's a ton of Flexbox helper classes in Foundation to help you build your own UI, and you can even use them on the grid. There's a lot to go over, so let's just jump right into it. Alright, so the first thing I want to show you is the Flexbox helper classes for positioning and alignment. Okay, so we have a few blocks here that are stacked on top of each other. Now, I put some backgrounds on these different divs, so we have left thing, middle thing, and right thing. You can see that they're just regular divs, they're full width, and they stack on top of each other. So there's no CSS applied here other than the background colors. So we have our images here that are stacked inside each one of these divs, and we want them to sit side by side instead of being stacked. So the first thing we can do is use one of our Flexbox helper classes. We'll add flex container. All right, great. So when we add flex container, you can see that they're now all side by side, which is what we want. So now we're going to be able to add more classes on here to manipulate the positioning. All right, so we have flex container, which is basically just adding display flex to this container. So now we can manipulate these to vertically align them or horizontally align them. So let's start with horizontal alignment. So we already have a flex container here, so now we're going to add align center. So align center will horizontally align these blocks in the center of the container that they're in. Now it's going to align all three of them because, again, this is on the parent level. It'll manipulate all the children the same way. So we can also do align right instead and shift everything over to the right. Now there is also align left, but that is the default position. Everything is justify content flex start, and that's what the align left class does. Align right does justify content flex end, and then align center does justify content, let's do center, and that does justify content center. All right, cool. So we have left, right, and center, but there's a few more that we can actually use here. So what if we want these things spaced away to the edges of the container? So we can actually use align spaced. And what this does is use the justify content space around value and property. So align spaced is one of those things that you'll probably use often enough. You'll probably use align justify the most. So here we go, align justify. This will align things to the outer edges completely, and if there's any content in the middle, it'll just center those inside of the remaining space. So just like this, we have 3 blocks, align justify. The 2 outer ones move to the outer edges. Everything else centers itself in the middle. And you can see that even if I did add another block or 2 in here, it'll just continue centering itself. The extra blocks will center themselves in the middles, the outer ones will be on the outside. And if we did that again with align spaced, you can see the same thing will happen. They'll just automatically adjust to have even spacing around each particular block. So those are your horizontal classes. Now we can look at some vertical alignment classes. So you're always going to have situations where some elements don't line up vertically with each other, or you want them centered to each other, and they're different heights. So Flexbox takes care of this, makes it easy, and these Flexbox helper classes allow you to do it really quick right in your HTML. So then what we're going to do is we're going to actually make this flex container taller. So that's here on this flex container. We're going to give this a height of 200 pixels. That should be enough to kind of get an idea of what's happening here. Now, when I did that, you could see that the background of each div is peeking out just underneath it. And that is because when you have a flex parent, your flex children all want to be the same height. They're all competing to be the same height, which is really cool. You don't have to worry about using plugins like Equalizer to make your containers equal height. They'll automatically be equal height. So that's a nice feature of Flexbox. And just using the flex container class or display flex on your parent will make your children want to be the same height. Okay, but we also want to vertically align these things. And so what I'm going to do first of all, just to demonstrate this even better, is to change the height of these things. So one is going to be 150, one's going to be 100, one's going to be 75. So they're all different heights for the images. So now what we're going to do is add some of our vertical alignment classes. So we'll start with align middle. Now you notice that all the alignment classes start with the word align. And so that's just make it easy to remember all of them. Align center is horizontal center alignment, and align middle is vertical center alignment. And what that does is align items center. So here we have align middle. You could see that everything is nicely aligned, no matter how tall or short they are. So that's pretty cool. If we want to align top, we can do that as well. Now this does two things. Adding any of the alignment classes does two things. So not only does it align it where you specify, it aligns all your children where you specify, but it also stops the behavior of making the children all equal height. So now you see that the backgrounds are not peeking out from these divs anymore because the divs are exactly the height of the content inside of them. They're height auto now. So you can get that nice Flexbox equal height without adding alignment class. Once you add an alignment to the parent, vertical alignment to the parent, it's going to override that and then make each child auto height. So that's what we have here. So we have it aligned to the top, and of course we can align to the bottom as well. So this does align items flex end. So now they're all aligned to the bottom. So those are the 3 vertical alignment properties, and we saw 5 horizontal alignment classes that are Flexbox helper classes to help you build faster. Now, of course, it all starts with the magic of the flex container class, which is also available. And once you have that flex parent, now you can add all of these alignment classes. Now, we of course can align these things individually as well. So what I'm going to do is get rid of the align bottom class here. And now I'm going to align these different blocks individually. So that's a nice thing that Flexbox allows you to do. You'll sometimes need to align something individually. So now I'm going to add on the div itself, so on one of the children itself, I'm going to add an alignment class. So I'm going to add align self middle on the first one. Okay, so there you go. It aligns itself to the middle. And now we can go ahead and do these to the other ones. And instead of middle, let's do, for the middle one, we'll do align self top. And then we can also do align self bottom on the third one. Okay, so now you can see that you can use Flexbox helper classes to automatically align your individual flex children. So that's really cool and powerful. Now there's one more property that you could use, or Flexbox helper class for align self, and that one is align self stretch. So let me show you what that does. So if I do align self stretch, you could see that now this third div here, which has the class of right thing, is actually just as tall as the container that it's in. So it's going to revert back to the default flex behavior for something that doesn't have a vertical alignment. So flex children, again, they all want to be the same height. Align self stretch will make this one particular element want to be the height of the container that's in, which is also really useful for specific different types of UI. Cool. So let's hop into a real world example where we're going to start using some of these things. So I set up an example here for you. And I have what would typically be considered a user profile card or something like that. So we have an avatar image, we have a div with some information, we have a status, and then we also have, what might be a button or some type of alert notification or status notification. So let's go ahead and break down what this code looks like before we start adding our Flexbox helper classes to really make this look the way that we want it to. All right, so when I think about Flexbox, I always think about Flex parents and children. And that's the first thing I consider. So how many children do I want to have, and how do I want them spaced out? Well, in this particular case, I want to have 4 different children, and I want them spaced out. Now, there's actually 5 lines of content here, as you could see, including the image. But we're going to show you how this is broken down in 4. So, first thing we have is we have the image. The image is our avatar here of Darth Vader. Pretty cool. So, then the next thing we have is a div. And it happens to have a class of info, but that doesn't matter. It's just a div. And this div contains the name of the user, in this case Darth Vader, and also how many subscribers Darth Vader has. So these are together in one div. Okay, so that's another child, so that's the second child. Then we have a div with a class of status, and it has some status like subscribed in this case. Well, that is our third child. Okay, and then our fourth child is the icon. So the icon here, that's an icon of a bell, that's our fourth child. So there are 4 direct children to this container, which has a class of callout. So the first thing I'm going to do is add the flex container class to it. So if I do that, you're going to see some crazy things happen. So first of all, it's display flex now. So what that means is all the children, the direct children, they want to be side by side. And again, like I mentioned before, they all want to be the same height as well. And these are all the same height. Now, if these other divs had a background around them, you would be able to see that. So let me show you that in the inspector. We'll get that inspector out of the way. There we go. So as you can see here, if I hover over these different divs, they are the height of the entire container. Of course, less the padding inside of the container. Okay, so that includes the image. So the image looks all stretched out, and that's probably not what we want this to be. So let's use our vertical alignment properties to align this. So we're probably going to align this all in the middle. So if we did that, we'll use the align middle class. Now that we have the flex container class on there, the align middle class will work. And as you can see, nicely, everything is vertically centered. So every single flex child here is vertically centered to each other, even though they're all different heights. Pretty cool. So now we're going to space these things apart from each other horizontally. I don't want them all jammed up against each other. So if I was going to do this, I could use the align spaced class. So if we did align spaced, you could see that now there's equal spacing around each particular div. And this looks okay. But maybe this is not what I want, so we could actually do the align justify class. So if we did align justify instead, this is a little bit more what I'm looking for here. We want the image and the icon of the bell on the outer edges, and then the information right in the middle. And so this is how you can quickly and easily use Foundation Flexbox helper classes to make your UI look much nicer, much faster. Now, we talked before about vertical layouts with the XY grid. You can actually do vertical layouts with Foundation's Flexbox helper classes as well. Now, they're not going to be so much layouts as far as a larger layout is concerned. We're talking more about UI. So let's take a look at our previous example here. So we have our flex container, and then we have our images. They're inside of these divs: left thing, middle thing, right thing. Now, these left, middle, right things are not going to make sense in a moment when we flip this on its side. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have a Flexbox helper class that will actually change the direction of this row. So right now this is a flex row. It's in the horizontal orientation. We're going to change that. So we're going to type in flex-dir, and we're going to change that to column. So flex-dir-column, flex direction column. And you can see here that now all of these divs want to stack on top of each other. All right, so this is really cool. We've basically just taken a horizontal row, and then we've flipped it 90 degrees on its side. So it's going to behave much the same way as it would normally, except now that it's flipped on its side. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So I want to align these blocks now, even though they're now in a vertical orientation. This flex container is in a vertical orientation. So flex direction column, we're going to orient these blocks. So if I wanted to now horizontally center these blocks inside of this container, because it's actually still a row flipped on its side, we're going to still use our vertical alignment classes to align these. Okay, so I'm going to add the class of align middle. So once I added the class of align middle, you could see that all the blocks are now aligned horizontally in the middle. Now, again, because this is a row that's flipped up on its side, you can still imagine that the vertical alignment properties will work. They're just going to now work in the horizontal plane. Okay, so we did align middle, but let's say we wanted to send them over to the right, then we would do align bottom. And now we shifted them over to the right. Of course, align top is your default where everything is off to the left. Okay, great. So we saw how those vertical alignment properties work. So now in a column direction, we can also see how the horizontal alignment classes work. So now they're going to work kind of in a vertical sense. So this is pretty cool. We can actually change the orientation of some of these things. So I'm actually going to make these significantly smaller so you can visualize this a little bit better. Okay, and I'm going to make the container here much taller. So we're going to give it a height of 500 pixels. Okay, great. So now you can see this box here represents our container. Now we're going to orient these blocks where we want them. So in this case, we're going to use our horizontal alignment classes to vertically align this. Again, that's because this is a row now flipped up on its side to be a column. Great, so let's do align. And let's do align right. So if we did align right, it's going to push all these blocks down to the bottom. If we did align center, then it will center them. Okay, we can also, again, use align spaced. And now it's going to space these things evenly apart from each other, or we can do align justify. Okay, so really cool that you could flip a row up on its side and make it a column with Foundation Flexbox helper classes, and then you can use your alignment classes just the same way you would have in a horizontal way, but now everything is vertical as well. So you can get that fine-grained control and set up your UI the way that you want it. Alright, so now I want to show you how you can use these Foundation Flexbox helper classes with Foundation's breakpoints. So you're not just stuck to creating a UI that stays the same way for every breakpoint. You can actually change it based on breakpoint. So here's an example where we're actually going to take these containers on top that are this light blue color, and we're going to flip them vertical on a smaller breakpoint. So on large right now, you see that they are horizontal, so that is the default position. And then on a medium and smaller screen, we're going to have them stacked, so to be flex direction column. Okay, as you can see that works really nicely. So the way that that's set up, again, we start with flex container. We need that on our parent to be able to use these Flexbox helper classes. And then we're setting up flex direction column. Now again, Foundation is mobile first, so that means that if you set up one of the Foundation properties, let's say it's flex direction column, that'll apply to the small breakpoint and larger. Now that's unless it's overridden. So we are overriding it here with the large dash flex direction row. So it's still flex dash dir dash row, but now it has large in front of it. So that means that the large breakpoint, it's going to kick in and become a row again. So that's how the mobile first classes work, and that's also how the responsive classes work. So you can do large flex direction row. You can even do large align center, medium align center, things like that. So instead of large flex direction row, I can actually change this to medium and use one of Foundation's other named breakpoints. And now it's going to be a row on medium. It's only going to be a column on small because it's being overridden at the medium breakpoint. So again, mobile first, and it goes up. So there's a lot of really cool stuff you could do with Foundation Flexbox helper classes. It's really exciting to just be able to throw these classes on there and make your pages look really good really fast. It really impresses the clients. All right, so now you have the power of Foundation's Flexbox helper classes in your toolkit. And this is really awesome because it sets us up for next week where we're gonna build some Flexbox components together. It's gonna be really awesome. I don't want you to miss that, so make sure you hit subscribe up above. Every time you do, the Yeti gets a Nerf gun. They're very safe, so don't worry. So we got a lot of cool stuff to cover in the next lesson. We'll see you then.